Cool.
Hello. Hello, welcome to the Running Wild 2021 Catalog Speakeasy. I'm Lisa Montaigne. I'm a writer, artist, and college professor coming to you from Southern California. Today I'll be speaking with authors from all over the country and the world. We're not only talking to our wonderful authors, but we also have many other exciting things to talk to you about. Feel free to ask questions on the comments, and we will do our best to answer them during the show. First, let's hear from the founder and CEO of Running Wild Press, Lisa Diane Kastner. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Lisa. How are you?
Great. So good to see you.
Awesome to see you too. So we actually at Running Wild, we have a lot of amazing announcements to make today. This is more than just the catalog. And that is undervaluing the catalog. We actually have some of the most fantastic titles that you're going to hear about quite soon that are being launched in 2021. And we're actually only talking about basically the first half of 2021's titles. So you're going to want to tune in again in January to hear about even more great titles. We also, though, wanted to tell you about how we have come out with completely new branding. So previously, our logo was of a woman running, hence, Running Wild. And what we've done is we have now adjusted it so that Running Wild LLC, which is more of like our parent company, has its own representation. Running Wild Press has a more generic individual, again, running free representative of great stories with great writing that don't fit neatly in a box because you can't contain us. And then Rise, which is our brand new imprint of amazing genre stories written by people of color. And that openness is represented in the wonderful book being flipped open. So we are really excited to bring this to you and to start our chat, our today's speakeasy with these brand new branding. So totally, completely fantastic. And not to steal Lisa's thunder, but we're also going to have another incredible announcement to make now that we had a gag order by those that gave us this, just phenomenal kudos. And that gag order is lifted as of today. So I'm not going to steal their thunder either. They will join us shortly as part of this chat. So with that, I'm now going to hand this off to Lisa again.
Okay, so let's hear more about Rise. We're super excited about this. Andrea J. Johnson is the acquisitions editor, and she is going to be telling us more about Rise and its mission. And she has some featured authors with us here today that she's going to interview. So, Andrea, so nice to see you today. Tell us more about Rise.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. And Lisa, at Rise, we know readers want to be entertained with stories that represent them, not some stereotype. Audiences crave spellbinding narratives and innovative prose written by people of color. The problem with most publishing today is that there's very little diversity in it, and minority writers are rarely celebrated. We believe those minority voices should actually be shared from the rooftops. So we at Rise have captured dynamic stories by diverse authors, and I'd like to show you some of our diverse authors and their stories today. Our first author is Tasha Hutchison. Tasha resides in Dallas, Texas, where she runs Wordy Writer LLC, a company that makes organizers and guides for authors. She's releasing a women's fiction novel, Broken Petals, with Rise. And while Tasha gets online and unmutes her mic, I'll read a short synopsis of her book. Broken Petals by Tasha Hutchison. Brooklyn Monty is dying. She believes she will succumb to Huntington's disease any day. Even though she is part owner of an event planning company, she often uses her illness as an excuse to push people away and sabotage her dreams. But now that she's almost 30 years old and the disease has started to take its toll, she's compelled to go on a journey of self-discovery and build her own legacy before the curtains close. So Tasha, it's beautiful to see you.
Hi.
Hi. Tell us a little bit about Huntington's disease, because part of the description that I didn't read is that the illness is what drives Brooklyn to do some things that she shouldn't do and wouldn't normally do. So tell us about Huntington's disease and what led you to create a storyline like this.
Well, it's a neurological disease and it's going to affect your entire body and take a toll on everything that makes you human. So, just as simple as swallowing, eating, all of those things will be null and void at any given time. It doesn't have a certain lifespan. So, it could be when you're 20 years old, 30 years old, you never know. And so that's why Brooklyn, she often uses it as an excuse to be in her self-pity, but her friends won't allow her to do that, her friends and her family. So they're the driving force that allows her to continue on and not let it consume her as much. And that way she'll be able to go on her journey through life with all of the things that we do as far as getting married, having children. And she's afraid that to have children because a lot of the children that are born to someone with this illness are also born with this illness. And so she does not want to pass that on to a child. So she has to get over all of those fears.
Wow. So tell us, what type of audience are you hoping to attract with this book? Quite obviously, it's women's fiction, but who else would this type of story appeal to?
I want to appeal to anyone who wants to go on a journey of hope. That's what I hope to give to my readers, hope. It doesn't matter if it's Huntington's or anything else. It could be anything that's small that you feel like it's a mountain in your life. It'll give you hope to go on a journey and accomplish all of the things that you want out of life as well.
Wow, so beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us, Tasha.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's bring on our next author, Remington Blackstaff. Remington is a Nigerian-born and British-bred writer who lives in London. His fantasy adventure, The Durbar's Apprentice, is his publishing debut, although I understand there are several other potential books in what would and could be a very successful series. Now, while Remington unmutes his mic and gets himself online, I'll read a brief description of his book as well. The Durbar's Apprentice by Remington Blackstaff. Set in 17th century northern Nigeria, the story follows a warrior's journey to unravel the truth behind a mysterious death that threatens to tip the bitter rivalry between the kingdoms of Kano and Sokoto into a bloody war. Primarily seen through the eyes of Isa, a child slave, the adventure is anchored by his relationship with his master, the Durbar warrior, and fueled by the trials of loyalty and betrayal they both endure. Welcome, Remington. I love that description.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, great. It's a pleasure to have you as well. As I stated, one of our international authors. So tell us, what was the inspiration for your book? And what message do you hope that inspiration imparts to your readers?
So the inspiration was actually a painting that I bought on a visit to Nigeria a few years ago. I have a son that's almost 3 years old. When he was just after a newborn, he would just stare at this huge canvas we have in our living room. And there was something quite powerful that made me think, you know what, one day I'd love to write a story that he can read when he's growing up, when he's a little boy. He can imagine adventure, things that I didn't have when I was growing up in England, and just connect with his ancestry in a way that I didn't. So it's almost a love letter to him, but it's also a love letter to the culture that I come from.
Right. So one of the things that people could probably take away is that history, that ancestry.
Yes, it's a very powerful ancestry that, again, growing up here, you don't get any exposure to. But when you speak to people who are born and bred in Nigeria, it's something that they're fiercely proud of. And it comes through in the way, like, us Nigerians, the way we behave, the way we speak, the way we carry ourselves. And to me, it's something magical that I think the world needs to hear more about.
Yes, I would absolutely agree. And setting it in a fantasy adventure world makes it something that all types of people can draw into. But tell us, what would be something that someone who's never read a fantasy adventure see about your book and want to pick that genre up for the first time?
I think the characters, I mean, there's something for everyone. I think there's no coincidence that I wrote it not long after I became a father. There's some very strong relationships between the two main characters. I was obsessed with martial arts growing up. So in terms of the discipline that one tries to bestow on the other, you get that in the story. So I think anyone who's interested in relationships between human beings, anyone who likes a bit of adventure, a bit of action, a bit of history, I think there's something there for everybody, to be honest with you.
Yes, and I should really point out that there are some really great martial arts action scenes described in the book. So that is definitely something to pinpoint when you're looking for an adventure story like this. Thank you so much for having us, Remington, or rather being with us, Remington.
Both, thank you.
And before I throw this back to Lisa, I do have one more announcement to make. We do have another author who's going to be on our inaugural season for Rise. He wasn't able to be with us here today, but Jude Duvall has written a mystery novel called No Molasses in Rum, set against a 1980s Brooklyn. And the main character is a newly immigrated Haitian street hustler who must unravel the brutal murder of his best friend. So folks should also look out for that book as well. And Lisa, I'll throw it back to you. Thank you so much for giving us time for our authors.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrea. That was fantastic. Thank you, Remington. And thank you, Tasha. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much for sharing with us. That was wonderful. Next up, we have Rebecca Brewer, and she's coming to us from New York City. And she is representing the Pixel Project. She's a freelance editor who specializes in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. As I said, based in New York City, she previously worked at Ace Rock, Penguin Random House, and the Science Fiction Book Club. Rebecca, are you there? I can see you, but I can't hear you. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question.
Yes.
This book is Giving the Devil His Due, and it's coming out by Running Wild Press in September 2021. And the Pixel Project is a nonprofit that helps women and fights against domestic violence.
That's right.
Yes. So tell us more about that.
So the Pixel Project is a completely virtual and volunteer-led nonprofit organization whose mission is to raise awareness and funds and volunteer power for the cause to end violence against women and girls across the world using a combination of social media, new technology, and popular culture and the arts. Thus, this fantastic short story collection.
That's so exciting. I'm really excited about this one. I absolutely love the title, Giving the Devil His Due. And so this is an anthology that's very unusual. As the description says, it sends a clear message that misogyny, toxic masculinity, and violence against women is unacceptable. But what really gives this an interesting, compelling twist is that it's like fantasy, science fiction, Twilight Zone kind of thing. Tell us more about that.
Yes, so the collection was actually inspired by a short story by award-winning horror author Stephen Graham Jones. His story was Hell on the Home Front 2, which is about a battered wife who finally gets rid of her abusive ex-war hero husband, who then turns into a zombie. So the theme of this anthology is about the men who commit violence against women and girls getting their comeuppance. So we have a nice Twilight Zone vibe that sort of evokes the spirit of Rod Serling to tell compelling stories about violence against women, but then also have really awesome endings.
Wow, that sounds like just really a great sort of, I mean, it has a great message, but it also just sounds fun. I'll have to be honest, it sounds really fun. So is there anything else?
Yeah, so there are going to be 16 stories. It's an homage to the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, which is one of the largest annual anti-violence against women events in the world. We have some amazing authors in this short story collection. That includes Christina Henry, Dana Cameron, Eric Nunnally, Hilary Monahan, Jason Sanford, Kelly Armstrong, Maurice Brodus, Nisi Shaw, Peter Tirius, and Stephen Graham Jones, among many others.
Well, that's wonderful, and I think again that this is a really important message, and this is something that I don't even think have barely begun to talk about, honestly, and this is something that touches everybody from all walks of life. I'll have to admit, in public here, even me, in my past. So I am really excited about this, and with Running Wild's partnership with Pixel Project. Is there anything else you want to tell us about this anthology before we say goodbye for today?
Just that look forward in September. The Pixel Project is really excited to be working with Running Wild. This is our first charity short story collection, so we're very excited to start this partnership.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rebecca. It was great to see you. And I can't wait to talk to you again and for this to come out and to read it. Bye now.
Great. Bye.
Okay, next up we have our duo here and they are going to give us a really exciting announcement. While they get settled in, I'm going to introduce them. We have Terence Hawkins and Peter A. Wright to talk about this. So in addition to Turing's Graveyard, Terence Hawkins is the author of the novels American Neolithic, A Kirkus Year's Best, and The Rage of Achilles, which will be reissued in a revised edition in the spring. Terry was the founding director of Yale Writers Conference and now runs Curbside Writers Workshops. He is joining us from Connecticut. Peter A. Wright, who edited Turing's Graveyard. His work has appeared in Past 10 and Fourth and Sycamore. His novella, 30 Seconds to Kill, was published by Running Wild Press in 2019. He has edited 2 books that have earned starred Kirkus reviews, and one of them is Terry's Turing's Graveyard. So I know you have a very exciting announcement to make, Peter. So let us have it.
Well, I believe the announcement is that Terry's book, Turing's Graveyard, was named as the best
Is
book.
Peter there? Terry, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. I can't hear Peter yet, so I'll just go ahead and make the announcement for you. Terry's book, Turing's Graveyard, was named one of the best books of 2020 by Kirkus Reviews. That's so amazing. How does that make you feel?
Well, as though I didn't waste a year or so putting it together, that's for sure. It's very exciting. It's very, very exciting. And I couldn't be happier. And also, I should say, I'm very grateful to Peter for sandpapering off some rough edges that were in those stories. And also to Lisa for bringing it out.
Yes. Okay. So let's have Peter ask you some more about that.
Are you able to hear me now?
I can hear you.
Ben, Lisa, can you hear me?
Great.
Oh, okay, good.
Congratulations, Terry. Well deserved, well earned.
Thank you so much, and thank you. I meant that.
The stories are fascinating. I thought they were all very interesting, and one of the things that struck me the most was the habit you have of not naming your male characters in your stories. Like you all have last names, but I don't think any of them have first names, do they?
I have never had a male character with a first name other than historical characters. So, I was kind of stuck with Ernest Hemingway.
Right.
But actually, it has occurred to me that many of my characters don't have names at all. So the guys with only last names are the lucky ones, I suppose. And I think the reason for that is that it's always difficult for me to make a made-up name sound organic. I just don't know why that is. I've tried like taking them out of the phone book or off gravestones, which is probably at least a misdemeanor. But they never work. And I think actually the overarching reason for that is that once you've named a character, you've created all sorts of expectations for him or her. And I also noticed, by the way, that the only characters I've written who have full names are both women. And one of them was dead. So I just don't, I mean, this is really more of a subject for therapy than anything else, I think. But.
Well, leading into your talk of characters, like I said, I found the characters fascinating with Drake and New Dad and Hemingway as well. Which characters, if you do have any characters that you particularly like, or for a name for a particular person?
Well, let's see. A lot of my characters are sort of named after me in sort of a perpendicular way. My last name is Hawkins, so that there's some resonance there with Elizabethan sailors. So I've got a Frobisher and a Raleigh and a Drake. In fact, I have a Frobisher and Drake both appear in the same story, and I imagine Frobisher as being about 30 and Raleigh as being about 50, and I was 40 when I wrote it, so I imagine them both as younger and older versions of myself. Neither of which version was particularly flattering, I'll hasten to add. The character I sympathize the most with, I would have to say, is Frobisher, because he's just another dope like the rest of us, trying to have his cake and eat it too, which doesn't work very well. And my least favorite is Ernest Hemingway. The more research I did on him as a person, the less likable he became. So I'm kind of stuck with that. So yeah, that's how that worked.
Oh, very cool. Do I have time for one more question, Lisa, or we wrap up?
Yeah, one more question would be great.
All right. I'll throw this back to you, Randy. What is one question that you wanted to answer that people or interviewers tend to neglect or omit?
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm going to respond to the question that I have been asked, but only recently. And that was by Lisa Kastner in a presentation we did, I think it was last weekend or the weekend before. She asked what I wanted to write that I hadn't written. And I thought, initially in my answer, I was, sort of snarky and discursive and said that, well, it's all squiggles on a page or ones and zeros on a screen. I mean, you can write whatever you want, right? But in fact, as I talked, I realized that there was a lot of subject matter that I don't touch because I simply, again, going issues for therapy rather than this venue, but I tend not to deal a lot with emotional issues other than a lot of my stories, has been pointed out, involve lust or panic. So those are the sort of two predominant issues that crop up. But I don't really write about interpersonal relationships very much. And I kind of hope that as I get older, I will be able to do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Terry, for taking the time to join during this fantastic press, this fantastic call we've got going on. And throw it back to you, Lisa.
Thanks so much.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Okay. So the best books of 2020, Turing's Graveyard. Congratulations to Terry. Okay, next we have Alicia Delorey.
And so Alicia is coming back. She's coming in now. So a little bit of backstory with Alicia's piece. Alicia, I knew Alicia from, we went to the same MFA, and so she had submitted to Running Wild just like everybody else submits. And as soon as I mentioned that we had picked up Alicia's memoir, one of our authors, Ruben Teehee Hazlett, who he was one of the authors who won Best of 2019 from Kirkus last year, said, "Oh my God, Alicia and I used to be drinking buddies, and since then Alicia no longer imbibes. But so this kind of it was a pretty funny like kind of serendipity that we picked up Alicia's "Something Is Better Than Nothing" as our memoir, one of our memoirs for 2021. And honestly, when you read "Something Is Better Than Nothing," you'll find that it has a very intimate feeling to it. And the editor that we picked to work on it, Benjamin White, he also is from a military background. And what had attracted Ben to working on Alicia's memoir was that this is a story that is really, really not often heard of. Actually, I've never heard of a memoir written with these specific topics. Typically, it's the veteran or the warrior who is telling their story, and this is more from the perspective of Alicia's, obviously, and hers is one of she was the person who she was the wife of a veteran. So this really talks about a lot of the pain that the wife of someone who's within the military may go through during that person's service and even afterwards. So we were really, really excited to get this. This had been selected as a BookBub featured new release, which was huge. We're really honored with, we've gotten BookBub has actually picked several of our titles in the past to be featured by them. So this was just another time when we were like, wow, that's great. You know, really thankful for that. So this is really, it's an amazing title, and I am just, I think just seeing, I'm sure Alicia will join us in a second. I know, Lisa, you're eager to talk to her, as anyone would be, because she is a really fun person to chat with. So I don't know.
Yes.
Do you have any questions about the title that I can cover while we wait for Alicia to join, or?
Well, maybe. I have a little bio of her that I can read while we're waiting.
Sure.
And yeah, so Alicia is a freelance writer, editor, and content strategist, as well as a TEDx speaker. She lives in Savannah, Georgia, with her husband and daughter. And she got a review by Eugenia Kim, author of The Kinship of Secrets. And so you can see it on the screen here. This stunning memoir relates a rarely heard account of a wife surviving her Army husband's return from Afghanistan with severe PTSD, which Lisa just mentioned. So when I have talked to Alicia before, she said that this is something that veterans have read and given her really a good feedback on, because like you said, it's from a story about the aftermath, whereas a lot of stories about war are often told from the soldier's point of view, usually before and sometimes after, but rarely from the point of view of the people who experience the fallout from it. Is there anything else you want to tell us about it, Lisa?
I know. I mean, Ben just felt so honored at the time to be working with Alicia, because he knew from his experience that this really was a perspective that wasn't provided typically. So for us to have the chance to bring this forward to the public, it's just a huge, huge honor, and we're really thrilled to do it. So I am going to guess, my suggestion is maybe we go on to talk to Larry, and then see if Alicia comes back on, maybe we can come back to her in a minute.
All right, that sounds great.
Cool. Okay. All right, Larry. I'm bringing you on, man.
So Larry Beckett is the author of American Cycle, which will be released in April 2021 by Running Wild. Larry is a poet, a lyricist, and lover of language who has been creating art for 6 decades. He loves both the energy of street poetry and the grace of formal poetry, which I am totally there with you as a poet myself. And
all right.
Jonah Raskin, author of American Scream, Allen Ginsberg's Howl and the Making of the Beat Generation, said this about your work, which I love. Whoever said that the long poem is dead was dead wrong. And as a poet myself, I'm so excited about this. So describe your collection of poetry for us and how you came to write it and what makes it unique in the world of poetry today.
Okay, well, it's not a long poem. It's 10 book-length poems bound together that make up the poem of America. And in some of them, the hero is the place, like Old California and Blue Ridge. There's U.S. Rivers, which has odes around an American nexus, which is a place where history, folklore, and song come together. There are tragedies, John Henry, Chief Joseph, Wyatt Earp, that explore American violence. There are comedies with pioneers of the spirit, Paul Bunyan, P.T. Barnum, and Amelia Earhart, whose disappearance is less important than her self-liberation.
So tell us more about the form and the language that you used, and tell us more about that.
Okay. The forms are derived from the traditions of our, but are made appropriate to the subject. So, for example, Paul Bunyan, you wouldn't want to write little short lines or stanzas or anything like that. I mean, they're lumberjacks. So it's a big, long, loose 12-syllable line where the stresses bump up against each other. No rhymes, but lots of music. And in the same way, the style, the language was tailored and modeled hero. So Chief Joseph sounds like a Native American oratory, for example, and so on for each of the 10 books.
Well, as you said when we talked before, Walt Whitman would be very, very proud of you. And I think that this is an amazing, incredible achievement that you have given us this amazing gift. I'm a poet. I believe in poetry. I believe it can make a difference. I really, really do. And as you said, lumberjacks need poetry too, right? So this is for everybody, but not only that, it just really appeals to my my American roots and not patriotism is the wrong word, but just the respect and love I have for our culture that includes such a diverse coming together of the world. So hey, Larry, will you read us some?
Sure. Here's the opening of Paul Bunyan. Out of the wild north woods, in the thick of the timber, and through the portal of the winter of the blue snow, within an inch of sunup, with the dream shift ending, a man mountain, all hustle, all muscle and bull bones, an easy winter full of swagger, a walking earthquake, a skyscraper looking over the tallest American tree, a smart apple, a wonder inventor, a sun's historian, a cockadoodle hero, a hobo, loud, shrewd, brawling, rowdy, brash as the earth, stomping, big-hearted, raw. Paul Bunyan lumbered and belly laughed back at the stars.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Larry. And I just think that this is such, like I said, a remarkable achievement. And thank you very much for being with us today.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye now. Next up, we have Vanessa Carlisle, Take Me With You, which will be released in April of 2021. Vanessa Carlisle holds a PhD in creative writing, literature, and gender studies. As a queer femme sex worker, activist, and educator, her work calls for big change while celebrating the beauty and complexity of her communities here and now. Dana Johnson, author of In the Not Quite Dark and Elsewhere, has called your book a rallying cry for Americans. Vanessa, are you there? And what does that mean to you?
Hi, I'm here. The rallying cry, I think what it means to me is that this book is really written from the perspective that the voices at the margins, the voices of marginalized communities are the ones who—
I can't hear Vanessa.
Oh, no.
Maybe turning up your volume or something? Okay, I can hear you now. I got it. Okay.
Okay. I guess my understanding of the notion of the rallying cry is that these stories are coming from people in marginalized communities, that the characters are all people who've had some contact with some of the scarier parts about life in America, houselessness, loss of a loved one, and navigating the prison system, right? That there's all of these ways in which Americans' lives are touched by difficult, painful systems. And so this book is written from that perspective, and it's coming to those stories and those life experiences from the idea that people who have those experiences are the ones with the wisdom to help us change the systems.
Okay, thank you so much, Vanessa. I'm having a little bit of a connection problem on my end, but that's okay. Thank you so much for sharing about Take Me With You. I'm really excited to read this when it comes out. Thank you very much. Let's move on to Eric Gethers. And while he gets on the show and settled in, I'm going to introduce him. So Eric Gethers is the author of Whales Swim Naked, which will be released in the US by Running Wild Press in May of 2021. He's coming to us from France today. Eric Gethers has spent most of his life writing films and being a script doctor for all the major studios, but since moving to France, he decided to do something different, and he wrote this novel, Whales Swim Naked. And the title comes from a phrase his son told him when he was 4. And his second book, Layla on Ventura Boulevard, will be finished soon. I'm from Ventura County, California, so I know where Ventura Boulevard is, both there and in the Valley. So your book was named Best of by Rolling Stone France, and I'm going to try and say this French publication. And Le Monde Supplement de Livre said about you that it appears that John Irving has, if not a son, at least a close relative named Eric Gethers, who has the same instinct for telling a tale, same capacity to surprise and to give us joy and emotion. So that's really something. So Eric, if you're there, say hello. And I would love to hear about how you came to write this book.
So unfortunately, Eric is having some connectivity issues. So Lisa, I'm more than happy to talk about this book. So Eric's piece actually came to us through mutual friends, where Eric had written this book. It was originally, to your point, it was originally published in France by a small publisher. And what was interesting is he had actually sent this out to multiple publishers, both in the United States as well as in France. And it just kept getting turned down. So when he sent it to the first publisher, who only released it in France, and they came back like literally the next day and said, "Oh my God, we have to publish this," he was pretty surprised. And we actually had a very similar response when we first read this literary satire classic. And, you know, when Eric brought it forward, when they published it, it actually blew up. It became, got tons of amazing, fantastic reviews, a lot of them wonderful attention. And so again, a mutual friend brought it to me and said, "You know what? Why don't you guys kind of look at this? Because it actually has a really interesting slice of life during a specific period of time within the United States, and how like more of middle America and like the middle class have interacted within this time period." So it's a really fun read. It is quite literary, but I really think that it's one that if you have an opportunity to read it, you won't want to put it down.
Yeah, and my understanding of the premise is that it is about a guy that he heard about who was going through a divorce and was having a lot of problems, and he decided that he was going to eat himself to death, which I love that premise so much. It just seems like it's the perfect premise for a satire of yeah, I don't know, the modern world. And so that's also where the title comes from, Whales Swim Naked.
Yep.
Okay,
yeah,
so do we want to hear from Alicia again?
Yeah, so we do. So Alicia is back. So I am going to add Alicia back in. Just give me 1 second and I'll bring her forward to you.
Okay.
Hi.
Hey, Alicia.
Hey. Good to see you.
Okay. Just let us know what you want people to just know about this book.
Yeah. So it's really two stories about, you know, what it is to grieve and lose someone.
Hi. No problem.
Oh, are we delayed? Is there a delay? I think there's a delay. Can y'all hear me?
Hey, so yeah, we can hear you fine. It's not a problem. Just keep going. You're doing awesome.
Yeah, it's two stories in one. So one about grief and what it means to grieve someone. And then the other part is the story we don't hear a whole lot about, is the other side of war when they come back from the family's point of view. And I think it's a story that has really only been told a certain way. So it's, I put a little more of a different, I think, more raw spin on it.
Yes, absolutely. It's a very raw memoir. I mean, you really do feel as though you are living it, your experience. The reader feels like they're living the experience with you through the words. Absolutely. It's wonderful. It's a truly wonderful memoir.
Thank you.
Is there anything, Alicia, that you really wanted people to take away from the piece?
I think the takeaway, if anything, is that there are different kinds of loss and there are different ways to just be okay with it. I don't think you ever really get over it. I think it's a process that you can learn and grow with, as opposed to learn and grow past.
Got it. Yep. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful takeaway. So, okay. So with that, Alicia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
we are really excited to get yours is actually the first book that we're going to launch next year. So cannot wait. And with that, I think we're now going to go to, we are going to move on to Eric Gethers. And I know that
I finally got here.
And we finally have Eric. Hey,
This
Eric, it's
good.
awesome to see you. Eric, just so you know, you are live. So everyone.
No, that's good. It's taken me about a half hour. Dwight, by the way, cannot do what I just did. I don't know why, because he's on my computer right now. And he's lost.
Oh, no. Well,
Yeah,
we have
trying,
you, and
like
we are
hell.
so honored to have you. It's just totally a blast to see you.
Well, this is great. It's nice.
Yeah.
Look forward to it. It's
So,
a little cold
yeah,
in France
so-
right now, but it's all right.
So Eric, we kind of already described your book and talked about your background and talked about the premise of Whales Swim Naked. I just wanted to say before we talk about it a little bit more that that you sound to me like the main character of Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris.
Oh, great.
He wanted to move off to
I
France.
hope that's good. Yeah.
No, wonderful. It's one of my favorite movies in the whole world. He was a script writer in Hollywood, and he moved off to France to write a novel at the end of the movie. So if you've never seen it.
I saw it. It's nice. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
I am very lucky to be. I've been here, almost 14 years. Long time.
Oh my goodness. Oh gosh. Well, that's longer than I thought. But how wonderful.
Longer than I thought.
At any rate, tell us more about the book. I already mentioned the premises about this guy who wanted to eat himself to death. So tell us what inspired you to write.
I used to live in Italy too for a while, for about 3 years, and I had a friend in Italy, lovely man. He was an American who one day, sitting around, of course, drinking, and he told me a story about his son. And his son was an air traffic controller in Maine. Okay. And anyway, and this is all true. This sounds like I'm making this up. It's not. And he was saying how he married like the woman every father, every mother wants their kid to marry. I mean, she was intelligent. She was kind. She was beautiful. She treated him like a king. And on their first, very important, I always forget this. Every day she drove him to the airport in the morning and picked him up. On their first anniversary, they were walking around, sipping champagne, having a lovely time, sort of talking like this. And she casually told him that every day after she dropped him off at the train station, she picked up between 1 and 3 guys and slept with them. Not for money, just for the hell of it.
At one time?
Yeah. Every day for a year. Yeah, so and this is true. As you might imagine, he didn't take this really well. They got divorced, but he was heartbroken. I mean, he was really, really heartbroken. So he decided he didn't want to live. Anyway, but he wasn't a type who could like kill himself with the traditional ways. He couldn't put a gun in his mouth. He couldn't hang himself. He couldn't cut his wrists. And so he decided to kill himself the only way he could, which was he loved to eat. So he would basically eat himself to death. And anyway, he went.
So this is based on that guy that you knew.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited for this book to come out because I'm going to be there with it, and I just love the premise of it so much, and I can't wait to read it myself. So thank you so much for France.
Good.
I'm sure. I'm sure it is. Thanks so much for connecting up with us.
Of course, my pleasure.
Yes. Okay. Well, happy holidays. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. So next up, we have Suzanne Samples. So is Suzanne there?
All right.
Hey, I'm right here.
Suzanne is here.
All right. Suzanne is the author of the memoir Frontal Matter, Gone Wild, which was given a starred Kirkus review, and it was named a Best Indie Book of 2019. It was published by Running Wild Press. She is an English professor at Appalachian State University and lives in West Virginia. She wants you to know that she loves cats and roller derby, but most of all, today is Suzanne's birthday.
It is. I'm so
Happy
excited.
birthday, Suzanne.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited.
So, tell us about how stargazing and solitude follows on from Frontal Matter, and yeah. So, tell us about how. Tell us about the new book and how it is a sequel to the first one.
Frontal Matter was all about how I was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer in 2017, but luckily for me, I survived. I wasn't supposed to, but I did. And so this follow-up is all about what happens after you survive terminal brain cancer and how that can be just as life-changing as the diagnosis, and kind of how I handled that, how I handled surviving brain cancer, and what I did with my time after I finished chemo and radiation and having brain surgery and all of that stuff that I needed to do. And so, yeah, the new book is all about what happens after that. You know, what do you do after you survive this terrible monstrosity that's supposed to ruin your life? What happens after that? And so this memoir is all about that stuff.
Fantastic. And you look fabulous, by the way, in your 1920s gear.
Thank you. I'm excited. I always love dressing up.
Totally. So I don't know, Lisa, if you have another question for Suzanne.
I think that's it for now, except for I wanted to tell us about how the medical community has responded to her book.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I didn't expect this, but a lot of doctors and especially nurses have read the first book and have responded to me and said, this has really changed the way I look at my patients, and every nurse and every doctor should read this, because now we know from your side what goes on in your mind, what you're thinking when we talk to you, and what you're going through, and how we can better respond to our patients. So I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't plan on that really, but just kind of randomly these people read it and happened to be in the medical field. And so that was kind of a neat thing that happened. And I'm hopeful that the next memoir will kind of put glioblastoma, the name of my cancer, more into the public eye. President-elect Joe Biden's son sadly died from the same cancer. So I'm hoping that not a lot of research has been done on it. And so I'm hoping this can broaden the conversation around the disease and around the cancer, and hopefully find a cure, within the next few years. I'm very hopeful for that, or just simply get some new treatments and get people talking about it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to make sure we talked about that context of the medical community. This is something that I've been interested in and been writing about myself. And so I wanted to make sure that we talked about that because of the reaction that the medical community has had. I think it's really important that patients tell their experience from their side of the story. And I just love the idea that you are at another birthday. And
yes,
so
me too.
and Woohoo! Yeah, I know. I just love that today is your birthday, and that we're doing this. I think it's especially poignant for you that it's your birthday, and that you're looking forward to a whole another year, and this, these two books that you have to share with the world, which is amazing that you have this time, and that you have done this. So thank you so much for being with us today, and happy birthday again.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate
it.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye now. All right, next we have Dwight Wilson. Is Dwight there?
I am here.
Dwight is here. He is with us.
Awesome. Hi, Dwight. Dwight Wilson is the author of The Re-Remembered, which will be released in July 2021. Dwight is the author of The Kidnapped and the Resistors, which was shortlisted by Kirkus Reviews in 2019. He's also an internationally published poet whose latest book in that genre was Modern Psalms in Search of Peace and Justice, which was published in 2017. So, Dwight, your new book, The Re-Remembered, is part of a collection that has been published by Running Wild Press, and so it's The Kidnapped and the Resistors were the two before, which we have pictured here on the slide. But tell us about The Re-Remembered and how it fits in the collection.
I was inspired to start writing because I did research and discovered that one of my fourth grade grandmothers, Sarah, was an escaped slave from Culpeper, Virginia. When she got up to Southern Ohio, she married a Scots-Irish Quaker. So in all three of my books, I write about, they are historical fiction. I do a great deal of research, years of research for each of them. And I follow families. And I do that, it's funny because I just followed a woman who has cancer, and I had cancer myself. And I was on a committee with a group of medical professionals, mostly doctors, researchers. And we're looking at the type of cancer that I had. And they were looking at data. And I think that the only way you can understand people is to look at folk and not at data. And so I make it come alive. I make that period between the Revolutionary War and the Civil War come alive with characters that you can follow all the way through. You watch them mature, you watch them devolve. You feel what is happening. You understand Black, white, Native Americans, all of whom were resisting the evil during their periods, even as many of us are resisting evil during our own.
That's fantastic. So I don't know, Lisa, do you have another question for Dwight?
Lisa, can you hear me?
So thank you so much for sharing us. I love historical fiction, and I think that it's a really unique historical fiction collection, and I like fictions. And thank you so much for sharing about your collection. So, is there anything else that you would like people to know about your collection and the new?
Yes. One thing I want people to know is that I write in Sarah's voice. Originally, when I started writing, I wrote in my own voice, and one of my former students, who is a well-known psychologist, said, if you're going to, why don't you write it in a woman's voice so that we can feel more intimate about it? And I decided that I would do so. And there were some people who had read it who said, don't do that, because it was in like the 16th draft. But it gives power to the woman because she was the one who I know escaped, and she is the one who's my fourth grade grandmother. And if you write in a woman's voice, I have discovered that.
Hey, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Wait,
and that wraps up. Oh, yes.
Yeah, well, I guess it's fine. Dwight wasn't quite done, but
okay.
but that's okay, Lisa. We can move on. Dwight
Okay.
is a long-standing family member of Running Wild, and the poor man has had to deal with me since I was 17. So I'm sure that we will be thrilled to have Dwight back again, especially in our June event.
Yes.
And so
yes.
I think next we're bringing up Porochista.
Yes. So take it away, Lisa.
So first, I want to thank Porochista Khakpour. I had the total honor of Poro was my mentor at Fairfield University, and I have to tell you that your method of teaching is so embracing and so loving that I think it actually enabled me to learn more, which in the creative writing community, that's like counterintuitive because everyone thinks, oh, well, I have to get slapped in the face before I can figure something out. But your approach was just like completely the opposite. And you really taught me a lot about teaching and interactions and, really kind of empowering the student. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice to hear. It was lovely.
So Porochista, I just had a couple questions for you. So my first question is, you've written both fiction and nonfiction. Your titles, as we can see on the screen, you've had really astounding, just wonderful success with both fiction and nonfiction. What's your favorite form to write in?
Definitely fiction for me. I sort of fell into doing nonfiction, and it's always been slightly more lucrative, though nothing's really been lucrative for me in writing. But I was also a trained journalist before I was like an essayist or a memoirist, and that was really a separate love of mine. But ever since I was like 4 years old, I wanted to be a fiction writer. Fiction is like my preferred reading material. It's really my culture. And nonfiction I sort of fell into because people were interested in my own background, and I had all these different sort of niches that had audiences from illness to my ethnicity and race and all that stuff.
Oh my God, that's so awesome. Okay, so speaking of nonfiction, the Brown album was named as one of the 100 must-read books by Time. How has that changed, or has it changed your life and career?
Well, I don't know if it ever really changes things like that. I've always, this sounds kind of braggy, but I've been lucky enough to have good critical acclaim throughout my entire career. All the books have been well reviewed. There's been lots of press. So I'm always really appreciative. And what I really liked about Brown album was that for the first time in my career, all the pre-pub reviews were starred. So that's pretty hard to get. So that was a big thing. And then of course, Time Magazine's been so supportive with several of my books. So that's kind of shocking and amazing to me that I have them as an audience. But it doesn't really ever change anything. I kind of have the same struggles I had, when I first started out 15 years ago, and nothing really changes because I'm not a huge money maker. I always have many jobs, and being somewhat chronically ill at times is a struggle. And I find now I'm working on my 5th book, and it's always you start from scratch. It's always from the drawing board again, and so it's always very humbling to be a writer. It never quite gets easier.
Yeah, no, I feel that. Okay, so on the topic of the Brown album, you cover topics from ethnicity to racism to depression to sexuality, and I have to say, I loved Suns and Flammable Objects. Actually, I loved all your work, and I totally love the Brown album. But what kind of response have you received from this collection, but more so from a reader's perspective?
I've actually been really surprised at how much reader email I got I got a lot for Sick, and actually for Sick right now I'm getting a lot more too, because it's been taught in medical schools quite a lot. And with the pandemic, people are really interested in illness narrative. So Sick has also been really good lately too. But I thought with like Brown Album coming out in May, like right like at the worst part of the pandemic, I just thought, oh, this poor book, it got all these good reviews, but it's just going to be dead. But then I was really pleased that it got a really good audience reactions, or at least like, you know, I don't see them face to face. I'm doing all these events over Zoom. There's been big audiences, but it's been really nice to get the emails from like individual readers. And I've been pretty surprised. You know, I thought it was going to be like, these are in my head, my Iranian American essays. And I thought, oh, maybe only Iranian Americans will care. But actually, I've heard from very few Iranian Americans, and in fact, a lot of, you know, all sorts of people. Weirdly, quite a lot of South Asian readers of mine, I'm sure, because I talk about brownness too. But it's gotten a really nice international reaction. And I think part of that has been because of the pandemic and these Zoom events where you can suddenly now, you know, have face-to-face with people all over the world. So it's been really nice. The reaction's been really moving. And I've just been surprised at how much people do relate to all the different essays and which ones they relate to. So it's been pretty great.
Oh my God, that's awesome. That is totally awesome. And I did mention, you know, I had the blessing of you as a mentor and as a teacher. And, you know, like I said, your teaching style is just so incredibly kind and generous. I just got to ask, who inspired you to teach that way?
Well, inclusivity is really important to me. And I really go into like whatever environment without any expectations. And I think that's hard for writers not to do sometimes. Like writers are often very intuitive. So they're often like very quick to judge people. And like, you know, we had like a group like at Fairfield, and you really couldn't make assumptions about anyone. Like you really had no idea what people's backgrounds were, or like, you know, I had all these ideas about Connecticut. Oh no, is Connecticut like this or that? But it ended up being such a moving experience. And I had such a diverse group of students. So inclusivity has been a major part of how I teach. And I think that has come from my own mentors. I mean, I had really good writing mentors who I was just extremely close to and who I'm still close to, like Victoria Riddell, like Danzy Senna, like Melvin Jules Bouquet, Stephen Dixon, who just passed away last year, Alice McDermott. I mean, these are just like world-class writers who also happen to be great teachers. And I don't think all writers are great teachers. In fact, I think a lot of writers really have no business teaching. But the ones that do enjoy teaching, I genuinely enjoy it. Like I would do it no matter what, even if I was very rich, right? Like I would still teach because I just love doing that. And I believe in a tradition. I believe in this sort of apprenticeship where we pass on our knowledge to our students, and there's like a whole chain. And that's a community for me. So yeah, I really believe in it. I really like cherish that compliment from you, because that's a big part of my life.
Oh, well, like I said, I mean, as a human being, as a teacher, I mean, I just think you're absolutely wonderful. So,
thank you.
And my last question. So what upcoming works can readers look forward from you?
Well, right now I'm working on some like investigative features that I've been working on for a very long time. I'm wrapping them up. There'll be a big piece in Esquire, I think, this year. And, you know, usual things like book reviews and stuff like that, essays always still. But the big one is my next book, which has already been bought. You know, the Knopf Doubleday Group bought Brown Album, and then they bought a partial proposal for this next book, which I started a decade ago, called Tarantulas, which is sort of like an Iranian Little Women. Actually, it's very twisted. Yeah, it's fun. It's splashy. It's satiric. It's almost all women cast. It's really over the top. And, you know, Tarantulas is a portmanteau that refers to like the very Iranian part of LA that I didn't quite grow up in, but I hung out in quite a lot. So it's really very close to me, and it's been a lot of fun to write. It's almost like too fun to write in a way. So I'm glad I'm back to fiction. I'm glad that I already have a publisher for this next book. And then, you know, I'll probably have another collection of, but this time of short stories, and then who knows, you know, it's exciting to think about like a 7th book or whatever that means, you know. I hope to get back to journalism a little bit too. Journalism is a really big love of mine. So
awesome. Well, I can't wait. I can't wait to read Tarantulas. Thank you so much for joining us. Totally love you. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Lisa.
Thanks. Thank you, Poro, so much for being with us. I really appreciate it. Okay.
All right.
Well, So this was our first ever catalog speakeasy, and we're going to have one again in June because that was just the offerings for the first half of the year. We have another whole back half of the catalog, I'm not quite sure when it's going to come out, but I do want to announce that I'm going to be editing a collection for Running Wild called Red Flags. We're taking submissions right now. It's going to be a modern love kind of nonfiction essays and short stories about relationships and everything that can go wrong and maybe right about them. And I'm really excited to be the editor of this collection and have some of my own contributions in there. So look for that if you want to submit something to our submittable page, our Running Wild submittable page. So join us again in June. But until then, every week we have Run Wild with Us, Ask Us Anything, live streaming on Saturdays at 2 p.m. on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I was guest with Lisa on that last week when we were talking about this upcoming event that we just did. And there's also Storytellers Happy Hour once a month, also live streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Fridays at 5:30. Look for announcements prior to the event so you know which dates that they are on. I think there's one coming up. And for more information, you can scan this code or look on the Running Wild Press website. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us. And our authors were amazing. They really are truly amazing. And these stories are just so rich and wonderful. Thanks so much, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Bye.